Okay, so yes, the current streaming setup I have with OBS may or may not be completely stable. So this whole thing is somewhat of a extended tech demo and everything, and clearly there's still a few things that need working out. Maybe the I've Skyrim'd it a little bit too much, where I tend to just add 1001 effects and filters and systems and, you know, programs and plugins and, you know, just, you know, stress test, basically. So, unfortunately, jumping from one scene to another there, even though I'd done it previously, it was just a little bit too much for the poor little thing, and it just went boop. So, apologies. But for those of you who did not see the first part of this video, this is the second half of my review of Arkham Unveiled, a setting / sandbox for 7th edition Call of Cthulhu. If you're curious about just my general spoiler-free opinions and everything, whether or not this is a worthwhile book or not, it really is. Then check out the first video. But again, the main point I want to make is this is not for players of Call of Cthulhu. This is for people who are running the game. This is for keepers only. Well, there are actually, I will say something I didn't mention in the previous book. Well, there are actually some new systems, not like the weather or anything, but the specific skills for local knowledge of Arkham, local history of Arkham. That is something for the keeper to inject into their game themselves. So there isn't really anything I would really, you know, I wouldn't hand this book to my players. I would highlight certain sections. I would give them the basic, and I have given them the basic rundown of this is what French Hill is like, this is what the campus is like, and so on and so forth. So that's a main thrust of this particular book. Well, anyway, the thing that we were about to discuss before OBS decided to shit the bed was an example of an update which I think they did very, very well. And that was a character which I am using in my game named Stuart Portman. Again, spoiler warning, if you want to play this game, this location, go away and watch the previous video. This is a big spoiler. You've been warned. Yeah, so Stuart Portman in the original book, he is basically a rather foul creature, and we're just going to bring up the book page real quick to show him off. Look at that smug piece of crap. And I suppose as well, a mild trigger warning for SA, you know, sexual assault. This was written in 1990. But yeah, unknown to most, Stuart, a lifelong bachelor, is a perverted brute. It basically goes into details that if a female character visits Stuart, who he's interested in, he basically drugs her. And we won't go into too much detail about what happens there, but yeah, you basically get the gist there. And any female character who basically that happens to and tries to tell people, because of his standing and position in Arkham, their basic reputation and everything is damaged severely. Now, in the new version of the book, Stuart Portman here, he is he's basically upgraded and improved in that he is no longer a date rapist. He is instead a serial killer, which unironically is much better. It's infinitely better because, again, this is a game. This is supposed to be a fun time round a table. Now, the characters being traumatized, that's fine and dandy. When your players are traumatized, that's something altogether different. And I do believe that this is something that game companies and just we as a community have really improved on and been able to deal with a little bit better over like the past 30 years. So I consider the Stuart Portman tweak to be a big improvement. But yeah, basically in both versions, he has a collection of various books of basically sadism and weird, creepy, pornographic material. And most of his collection is actually coated with a contact poison. So if anyone's breaking into his private stash and is reading it without wearing special rubber gloves, then there's going to be a bad time had by them. So again, I think he makes a very interesting character. He's also very closely connected with the main judge in Arkham, Judge Randall. So I think that he makes a very interesting villain, and the main reason I started using him in my campaign is, again, I'm opening my campaign with a independent scenario called The Reeling Midnight, which uses Stuart Portman as one of these side characters. And I find, it actually does a good job of, instead of him being a potentially friendly character, you kind of realize off the bat he is a bit of a creep. So I do think that because that adventure was written before this reimagining of the character and the setting came out, I do like to think that they were maybe trying to cut that character off at the beginning, so no female character would trust a dude who is, mild spoilers for Reeling Midnight, by the way, perving on a couple in their bedroom through a keyhole, and he is discovered by the player characters. So yeah, very unpleasant character he's supposed to be, very punchable, and I am really looking forward to seeing what my player characters do to him as our campaign progresses, because he is a creepy SOB, and yeah, he's a very hateful character. But I do think that this upgrade to him is definitely an improvement, because the whole previous thing was needless. When you put in game mechanics for someone being drugged and all that sort of stuff happening to them and everything, and there's like mechanical problems where it's like their reputation is harmed and everything as a result, that's not fun. That's not good. There's no way that that's a good game. Whereas like if you basically your character is poking around this dude's private place, and they're basically they try to steal his weird mythos shit, and they slowly start dying because of poison, and it just feels better. It's just I don't think I need to over explain it. I just think it's a definite improvement. Another thing which I thought was an interesting update was again, this was actually Hagen Wilson. This was one of the characters I mentioned in the previous video. Literally nothing has changed about his character, his personality. The fact that he was a painter who got inspired by the mythos, and he is slowly losing his mind and his money and his reputation as he sees more and more crazy shit. He's connected to the Eye of Amara, which is a really interesting organization that I have some of my player characters connected to and everything. You know, I think he's an excellent character, and I don't think him now being a black man is in any way a detriment. I think it's a logical choice in that it just adds to, no pun intended, it adds to the color, it adds to the depth of the setting. I think it's an excellent addition. Other additions which I think are pretty good is like they haven't included the what am I trying to say? They haven't included the entire adventure or scenario from various editions of the game that are out of print. However, there have been various additions to this location after the original 1990 book came out. And what they have done is they have gone out of their way to incorporate any new buildings, new locations, new characters that are an integral part of those adventures. Even though we don't have the adventures themselves, those characters and everything are included here. So you could absolutely run a bare bones version of that adventure, or again, very easy to find a reprint or an old version of that 90s adventure, or 80s even, lest we forget this game has been going since I think the late 70s, now I think about it. Geez, yeah. So you could take any of that old material that is set in this location, and you could easily bring it up to date with the stuff that's in here. So I guess for the most part, that's pretty much it. This expands everything. I'm very glad they actually got rid of all the previous scenarios that were included in this older edition, because no disrespect intended, but some of them were, well, the quality would be, let's be generous and call it mid at best. Oh yeah, and this was all the D20 versions of their stats and everything. Where were we? Investigating backgrounds. Trying to remember. Just bring it up to the front here. Unfortunately, there's no bookmarks in this older version of the PDF. So here we go. So yeah, there were like 4 adventures plus a reprint of the original Dreams in the Witch House story by Lovecraft, which is, it's a good vibe check. It's a good way of getting you in the headspace for this game. But at the same time, it's like all of this stuff is somewhat padding, and without it, with it being ripped out, the developers of this new book have been able to really go deep and add a lot of really useful depth and expansion on stuff. So the fluff has been taken out, and instead we've got a lot more meat, a lot more really interesting narrative meat that we can sink our teeth into and use to tell our own interesting story. And that's my opinion anyway. But yeah, one thing I will say out of the adventures, Dead of Night has all but been confirmed as being in the works of a remaster at some point, which is great because I would say out of everything, it's a pretty good story involving the ghouls of Arkham. Is it the ghouls? Oh wait, am I getting it mixed up with let me just, anyway, it's a good one. I've got 20 different scenarios in my head at the moment that I'm trying to chop and change and remove around for my own campaign, so some of the things kind of bleed together. But I will confirm that the Books of Uncle Silas might be one of the, oh my gosh, it is the most D&D thing ever. It does not work for my money as a worthwhile Call of Cthulhu game. It is basically, I'm more than happy to spoil this one. One of the player characters, it turns out they were adopted, and their family bloodline were really they had a collection of really powerful books, and your immortal uncle wants your family's arcane tomes for himself. And so you basically very early on are all but gifted a whole collection of mythos tomes. And again, if you don't play this game, this isn't really going to mean too much to you. It's like, well, yeah, okay, the whole point of the game is to find out, you know, you find the mythos books, get the magic and everything or something, and try not to go insane, right? Each mythos tome, in essence, depending on how powerful it is, could be the equivalent of I would call them plutonium, basically. I would say it's kind of on par with something radioactive and dangerous. So the fact that you're just given a whole bunch of them right off the bat, it just devalues their value, you know? Books of Uncle Silas, I'm sorry, it's just not a very well thought out scenario. And I would actually like to run it at some point so I can actually properly sit down and have a talk about exactly why it sucks. Or maybe I'll have my mind changed and I'll think it's awesome. But anyway, one final thing I will say, a little bit of a note. Included with the new book is a copy of the Arkham Advertiser. It's a 4-page spread that was created by the amazing people at the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society. They do amazing prop design. Their visual eye and their ability to create something that feels authentic and usable in your games is unsurpassed. They are the people to go to, and I do appreciate the fact that Chaosium reached out to them and asked them to make this prop that's included with the book. And the idea is that you would hand this newspaper to your players, so again, they get a vibe check. They can basically kind of get in the headspace of what's going on in Arkham during 1922. We're very early into the 20s. My complaint, and I do have a small complaint. I think it's a bit of a petty complaint, but it is a complaint nonetheless. My complaint is, silly as it may be, is that this feels far too authentic. It feels too much like a normal newspaper. Now, the reason I say that is because their previous creation, Dateline Lovecraft, again, supposedly the same newspaper, only this is like later in 1928. And for context, again, for those who don't know, what most people consider to be the standard setting for Call of Cthulhu is the year 1928. However, this new book goes out of its way to actually dial the clock back quite a bit, because by 28, all the crazy shit has already happened. Whereas if we start our game very early on in 1922 onwards, that gives your players time to see Arkham evolve and change as different characters start to see more of the mythos and get a little bit more freaked out. And I kind of like that sliding scale, that sliding timeline. It really opens things up a lot more, and it makes it a lot less limiting. So I do think that's an excellent change. But back to my point. I'm spoiled by this particular piece of media. Dateline Lovecraft is quite literally filled with story seeds. All of the different advertisements, the little side stories, the personalized what am I saying? The want ads, everything here has hints of weirdness going on. It has great story seeds. It has a lot of really interesting sort of like infant deaths on the rise. You know, things overheard in church. You know, some of the commercials like murder at the Manly Mansion and stuff like that. All of these, so there's something here like Lost and Found. There's a whole series of third-party adventures that people have made based on individual want ads from this thing. It's amazing. And again, visually, I think that the commercials, the advertisements, they just, again, like this version of the Gleason's commercial versus maybe this one. I mean, actually, yeah, I kind of like this one too. But, you know, this seems so much cleaner. It seems so much more sharp and straight-edged. And I don't know. This one, it just has personality to me. It feels more rough and dirty and aged. It's a personal preference. And again, it's just... I mean, look at this. How many pages there are? You're just spoiled for story and everything, and you could use this one thing for years and years and years. Whereas this, you know, it's like, yeah, you hand it to your players, and there's one or two things. Again, Dr. Peasley, a character that is going to maybe be important in your game, like all the stuff that happens with their, like their story and everything is somewhat interesting. So there are opportunities here, but a lot of it is a lot more, it's more grounded in reality, whereas this one is more grounded in the drama and the fiction, and I would say it's a lot more useful as it feels Arkham is more a fictionalized but hyper-realized location, if that makes sense. This seems a lot more by the numbers. This one feels a lot more hyper-realized. But that is a personal preference. You can use whatever, you know, handouts that you want. It is your game, your campaign, salt to taste and everything. So... just moving back over to here. Hopefully we don't crash the thing again. Ha ha ha. But yeah, this entire publication is absolutely filled with inspiration. You could easily run an entire campaign with just this and the Keeper's Guide. In theory, you could use just the quick start rules as well, I suppose, but... you know, I would recommend that if you're going to be splashing out for some books, you want to be using like the Keeper's Guide. And again, if you were one of the lucky people who was able to get that insane Humble Bundle thing a month or two back, then absolutely you're set. You just add this to the library and you won't go wrong. This is really, really, really worth your time and investment. I believe that is pretty much everything for the most part. Thank you so much for watching this meandering, rambling review even. Again, I'm barely in camera because my pop filter is in the way. Again, work in progress. All of this a work in progress. But if you are curious about some of the stuff that I do and you would like a little bit of a sample of the games I run and everything, because of course Stuart Portman and the Reeling Midnight scenario are but the beginnings. I love how I'm mirroring the creepy dude in the painting there. All of that is but the beginning. I have a lot of scenarios from all over Arkham's and Call of Cthulhu's history that I'm looking to draw from for my games, and I would love to have you at my table anytime. So I'm going to stick a link in the description to these videos for my start playing page. At the moment of recording, we have 2 open spots for investigators. Once the Reeling Midnight ends, the next scenario may or may not be making use of some of the material that I have shown, but a lot of it is still that is still something I'm keeping a closely guarded secret. But there is a reason I'm calling it Nightmares of Arkham, and there is a reason why I like the setting of Kingsport as much as I do. But that's pretty much going to be it. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this, whoever you are. Be good to yourself. I strongly urge, if you've actually got through this video and you've never played Cthulhu, welcome. Seth Skorkowski, the Modern Mythos podcast, the Good Friends of Jackson Elias podcast. There are many, 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 many amazing resources for this game. And I'm going to try and link a couple again in the description, some of the subreddits and everything. And I really hope that we get to join you and you enjoy your time as one of the choir of the never living. Be good to yourself, guys, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Whoops. Hang on a second. I never actually updated the final art, you know, the thank you and goodbye art. Cool. Okay, so nice. I'm a professional. They do say the first is the worst. Be good to yourself. Have a good